Chapter 3287. These two children were very intelligent, and had been brought up very well. She had been looking for Tang Guo in the manor, and finally found Mei Shangji, and Tang was sitting on a rattan chair. He was feeding Tang Guo grapes. Tang! The old madam suddenly remembered that Tang Guo could no longer be called Madam Tang. Madam Mei, how have you been? So it's the old madam of the Marquis's household. How about you? I heard that the Marquis's household is very lively. Did they disturb you? Tang Guo asked with a smile, afraid that she wouldn't be able to anger the old madam to death. The old madam took a deep breath. Very well. This old woman's body is very strong. It won't be a problem for me to live another 20 years. The two troublemakers in the manor weren't as troublesome as Madam Tang. Even Madam Tang didn't anger her to death. Those two were nothing. Greetings, madam. At this time, Qiu Yu and the other concubines found Tang Guo's position and quickly greeted her happily. Donger greets madam. Yuanxiang greets madam. Xingyin greets madam. Mei Shangji was extremely unhappy. Every time there was a festival or a birthday, these eyesores would appear and drag his little fairy to play with leaves. Once they played, it would be for an entire night, causing him to sleep alone for the entire night. It was cold and pitiful. Madam, are you here to play with leaves? Qiu Yu and the others hadn't married. It wasn't that they didn't want to marry, but that they didn't have anyone they liked. And they hadn't found anyone they liked yet. System, you're all comparing the host. Stay single for the rest of your life. In any case, you're all fair, rich, and beautiful now. You won't starve to death. Yes. Tang Guo had just said yes, when she felt Mei Shangji's resentful gaze. He even forcefully pulled her hand. But I won't play all night. I'm already so old. If I continue to stay up late, I'll age easily. If I age, I won't look good. Are you afraid that the young master will dislike you? Qiu Yu pondered. If the young master dislikes madam, then madam should divorce him. Madam is so good. She deserves better. Mei Shangji, the old madam, who was watching from the side, widened her eyes. She couldn't believe that this was the maidservant that she had taught in the past. This shrewish girl was exactly like Madam Tang from years ago. What? She was disliked by her husband, so she had to divorce him? How could that be possible? However, she knew better than to say anything. Qiu Yu, you guys should give up. I will never abandon my wife. She is my treasure, my sweetheart, my little fairy. Old madam. This old sweetheart of hers can't take it anymore. Old madam, are you playing with leaves? However, we don't allow the elderly here. As Tang Guo stared at her, old madam Sheng humphed, let's play. She couldn't win against Tang Guo with words, but she couldn't possibly lose to Tang Guo with a simple trick. After a few rounds, the old lady admitted defeat. Before she left, the old madam hesitated for a moment and said to Tang Guo, in the future, if there's no one to play with the leaves, you can ask someone to come to the Fu and call me. Although the Marquis's estate was lively, she did not like it. This Tang Guo was really poisonous. Here, this is for you. Old Madam Sheng handed Tang Guo a handkerchief before she briskly walked away. Wife, what is this? Tang Guo opened the handkerchief to have a look. On the four corners of the handkerchief, there were words. But, she had to fold the handkerchief in half to see what the words were. Thank you, I'm sorry. The Peak. Chapter 3288. Lu Junhua had already recalled everything that had happened in the past. She had given herself to Dou Changye because of the objections of the two families, and the fact that the Lu family was planning to marry her off to someone else. However, Dou Changye did not do it when he was sober. They used to hang out and have fun together often. They would also drink some wine occasionally. She first made Dou Changye drunk and hallucinate before lighting some incense to liven things up. Finally, she made him think that it was a dream and everything happened in a blur. She did all of that just to let the Lu family understand her determination. She was mainly afraid that the two families would object to it. Since the Lu family wanted her to be their family, she decided to give Dou Changye her best. She would not regret it when she got married in the future. As for what her future husband would think, what did that have to do with her? She was not willing to get married, but she knew very well that the Lu family would definitely force her to get married. They might even use some coercive means. By then, She reckoned that she might not be able to escape, and might as well just let it go. The person who married her probably knew that she loved Do Changya wholeheartedly. Since he still agreed to it, he could not blame her for doing those things. However, she did not expect that she would get pregnant because of that. She obviously could not bear to abort the child that she had with the person she loved. She even threatened the Lu family by saying that she was already Do Changya's woman, and that she was pregnant with his flesh and blood. If they were to marry her off to someone else, they would become enemies. Under such circumstances, the Lu family indeed did not dare to marry her off. In the beginning, they thought of many ways to make her abort the child. However, she managed to resolve all of them. In the end, the Lu family had no choice but to send her away. They sent her to a remote village and told her to fend for herself there for the rest of her life. However, they did not expect that she would meet with an accident. However, she did not die and even managed to keep her child. However, she had lost her memory. When Ting Pavilion Lu Junhua, who had recalled everything, hurriedly told Do Changya about it. However, Do Changya, who had been chained up all day, did not seem to be that happy. In the beginning, he was indeed happy that Lu Junhua had remembered everything, including the fact that the child was his. He had even promised Lu Junhua that he would definitely get through this. However, Madame Dowager would no longer let Do Changya off. He was a scourge who had brought disaster to the Marquis's mansion. If he was released, the Marquis's mansion might be destroyed one day. Lu Junhua also thought of countless ways to escape, but no matter how many times she tried to escape, she was caught again. Everyone in the capital knew about the commotion in the Marquis's mansion. They also understood that the woman who looked like Lu Junhua was Lu Junhua. Could it be that Lu Junhua wanted to escape because Do Changya was seriously ill, and she didn't want to be implicated? The Lu family had also said that Lu Junhua was already a member of the Marquis's residence. As for how she should be dealt with, it was up to the old madam to decide. Obviously, they had given up on Lu Junhua. Lu Junhua's escape was fruitless, and her days in the residence were not easy. It was the same for Do Changya. The two of them who were originally in love with each other gradually became dissatisfied with each other. Lu Junhua missed the days when she lived in the big house in the east. Now that he thought about it, Shengguan Qingxuan was actually not bad. He was still the high and mighty emperor. The reason why she did not consider Shengguan Qingxuan was that he had countless concubines. Even though she had lost her memory, she still wanted to be with him for the rest of her life. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Peak. Chapter 3289. Facing the current Do Changya. Lu Junhua began to feel regretful. Do Changya was filled with regret too, especially when he realized that Lu Junhua had gradually stopped caring about him. Hence, he was infuriated. Sometimes, he would even hear Lu Junhua and the child talking about how he had let Shengguan Qingxuan down. The child was his, but he kept saying that he wanted to see Shengguan Qingxuan and that he missed him. That made Do Changya so angry that he lost his temper and started arguing with Lu Junhua. At first, the two of them were just bickering, but later on, they even got physical. Do Changya, who had no martial arts skills and was chained up, did not have the upper hand. Old Madame Dowager could hear the two of them arguing in the house every day, and had long gotten used to it. Hence, she did not bother about them at all. Nanny, if the second thing I did wrong was to mistreat Tang, the first thing I should have done was to stop them. Old Madame Dowager opened her eyes and looked at the two children who were playing outside the house. She smiled and said, "If I hadn't stopped them back then, do you think they would have gotten together without any obstacles? Nanny, don't you agree that things that are too easy to get are not cherished? Good things will only be regretted when they are lost. That's human nature." Nanny smiled slowly and said, "Old Madam, the weather is good today. Madam May is probably sunbathing in the courtyard again. Do you want to go over and play with her?" "Yes, that's a good suggestion. Bring the two children along and go over together." The two children were all the hope of the Marquis mansion. She could not count on Do Changya, and Lu Junhua was not willing to let her raise the children. She did not care whether Lu Junhua wanted to raise them or not. As long as they had food to eat, they would not starve. When they reached the age of 18, she would get a teacher to teach them how to read and write. She would also get more people to keep an eye on them, lest they caused trouble for the Marquis mansion. One day, Lu Junhua finally found an opportunity to escape from the Marquis mansion. Shishu website. Perhaps she was lucky enough to run into Shangguan Qingchuan. When she saw Shangguan Qingchuan, she bit her lips and her eyes turned red instantly. Young Master Huang, long time no see. Shangguan Qingchuan glanced back at Lu Junhua and said with a smile, "So it's Madame Dou." He stopped addressing her as Madame Dowager because a few days ago, Madame Dowager had personally entered the palace and told him that Dou Changyi would not be able to recover from his illness and that the position of the heir would be given to Dou Changye's children. As for which child it was, he would report to him when the child was older. Shangguan Qingchuan was naturally happy to do this, so he deprived Dou Changye of his position as the crown prince. Therefore Lu Junhua could only be called Madame Dou. "Young Master Huang, can you help me?" As soon as Lu Junhua asked, a few girls with different looks suddenly appeared around Shangguan Qingchuan, winking at him. "Master, I saw a very beautiful mirror just now. Master, this concubine wants to buy some rouge from that shop. I'll show you how to apply it when we get back." As she spoke, she even raised her chin and glared at Lu Junhua. This Lu Junhua shouldn't even think of trying to snatch Yi Zichen from them. They had already reached a consensus. Yi Zichen had not had a new concubine for so many years, and had never left any of them behind. It would be better for them to get along peacefully, so as not to cause trouble for Yi Zichen. Indeed, they had made the right move. Yi Zichen was becoming more and more attentive to them, but he still had no intention of taking in new concubines. Even if some ministers brought it up, they would be scolded and rejected. The Peak. Chapter 3290. Saying that the ministers wanted him to die of exhaustion, scolding them so badly that they laughed themselves to death. Serves those ministers right for looking for trouble. Now that their master was free and often took them out for a stroll, they felt that there was no meaning in fighting anymore. Moreover, they felt that if they were not obedient, their master might not want them anymore. But they would not allow this kind of person who wanted to take advantage of their master. "Madame Dou, I have to take them to buy things, so I won't talk much." Under Lu Junhua's incredulous gaze, Shangguan Qingchuan was taken away by several stunning women. Originally, Shangguan Qingchuan planned to create a few princes to take over his position in the future, and he could get some small secrets of cultivation from his imperial uncle. Then he would follow his imperial uncle to cultivate, and the imperial palace and eastern Shang country would be handed over to his sons. But the concubines in the imperial harem were too well behaved. He could feel their sincerity. Finally, he decided to accompany them for a lifetime, and after they left, he would leave the imperial palace and follow his imperial uncle to cultivate. But the reality was hard to predict. After living with these concubines for a lifetime, he actually had the idea of giving up cultivation. "Qingchuan, are you really going to give up?" "Yes, imperial uncle, I give up." Shangguan Qingchuan's face was full of smiles. His face was very old, not as young as Shangguan Yungu was in the past. "Imperial uncle, why did Shangji leave with the person he likes? Maybe this is the love from the heart. In fact, it's really inconceivable that I can like several of them at the same time." Shangguan Yungu could not help but laugh. "It's not strange at all that this happened to you. You are also amazing, to be able to manage the imperial harem so harmoniously. In fact, it's easy to achieve harmony after understanding their thoughts. In my lifetime, there are still small conflicts, but they are very well behaved and obedient. When they see that I am angry, they don't dare to make trouble. It's because you are very good to them. They are afraid of losing you." Shangguan Yungu was also not the same as before. Even if he was still a prince without an army, he knew many things. Martial uncle will not stay in one world for long. Granduncle, that brat, will chase after him every time. He is also very persistent. That is why I can understand your thoughts. Shangguan Qingchuan was amused. "Granduncle, what kind of address is that?" "Qingchuan, I won't try to persuade you. You've already gotten used to getting along with them. Your feelings for them have already become a fetter that you can't let go of. His master was right. Even if he forced himself to cultivate, he wouldn't achieve anything in the end. He would still turn into a pile of dirt. You might as well have given up from the start. When Shangguan Yunga saw Shangguan Qingchuan's face gradually aging, he knew that Shangguan Qingchuan had given up. Imperial uncle, let them in. I want to talk to them again. All right. Your Majesty, how are you? Are you feeling unwell? Should I call the imperial physician over? What do you want to eat? This concubine will prepare it immediately. Do you want to listen to a little song? I'll play it right away. Although this concubine is not young, but if the emperor wants to see me dance, this concubine should be able to dance. Shangguan Qingchuan flicked their foreheads and said, All right, you're already so old. What's the use of flicking? Flicking? Jumping? Isn't it good to talk? 1 month later, the current emperor, Shangguan Qingchuan, passed away. On the same day, several of Shangguan Qingchuan's concubines died for love. Shangguan Yungu made the decision to bury them together. The Peak. Chapter 3291. Tang Guo arrived in the new world. Looking at the spacious room and the wedding photo hanging on the wall beside the bed, she couldn't help but mutter, I'm going to get married again this time. System. It's all because of the random teleportation. It's really against the host every time. I can't stand it anymore. Now that guy has to wait for you to get married again. I don't know how long he'll have to wait. Tang Guo smiled. There doesn't seem to be any danger around. It's a modern world. It should be more peaceful. Let's go to the group and say hello. School bell. Everyone, I've arrived in the new world. This time it's a modern world. I haven't looked at the memory yet, so I don't know the current situation. Is Yunga here? Shangguan Yungu. Yes, Martial Uncle. It's been so many years. You've just arrived in the new world? I remember that the flow of time here was the slowest. How did it become faster? Qi Xiao. Time used to be slow at your place. It should be God's will to let the girl go there. If it was fast, you might have died before she reached your place. Yungu, you're a cultivator now. It's normal for time to pass fast. In our group, for those who cultivate, time passes much faster than the girls, probably because of our lifespan. Look at Emmanuel. Time passes very slowly. We've been here for many years, but he might have just had afternoon tea. And there's really no pattern to the flow of time. Sometimes it's faster, sometimes it's slower. School bell. Brother Qi Xiao is right. It should be like that. By the way, Yungu, how's Qingchuan? What about the house of Marquis? Hot book. Shangguan Yungu was silent for a while, and told them about Shangguan Qingchuan's choice. Although everyone in the group knew about it, they still sighed when they heard it again. Although there were people in this world who could resist the temptation of immortality, Shangguan Qingchuan's choice still made them sigh. School bell. Actually, I've seen it a long time ago. He's not enthusiastic about cultivation anymore. In the beginning, he would ask me questions every day, but after a few years, he stopped asking about these things. Instead, he asked me about some beauty maintenance recipes, most of which were for his concubines. To be honest, in that era, those concubines in the imperial harem were really lucky to have met someone like Shangguan Qingchuan. These concubines were also smart and had made the right choice from the start. They had lived together for a lifetime. Even if they didn't have a strong love for each other, they would still be very sad if one day this person was no longer around. Shangguan Qingchuan was no longer suitable for cultivation. It wasn't that he couldn't be emotional during cultivation, but he didn't want to experience loneliness in the long years to come. Thus he would rather die. Shangguan Yungu. The old madam of the Marquis' estate is still alive and very healthy. The house of the Marquis was still as lively as before. However, one could often see the old madam leisurely passing by the house of the general with her entourage. She would stand there for a long time, probably thinking of her uncle master. Qiu Yu and the others, on the other hand, often play with the old lady. They don't have any plans to get married. I think it's good. School bell. That stubborn old lady's body is really healthy. She must be more than 100 years old. Shangguan Yungu. Her 120th birthday just passed. She had a banquet that lasted for 5 days and 5 nights. Transmigration. Female supporting character calm down. The error-free chapters will continue to be updated on the handwriting bar. There are no advertisements on the website. Please bookmark and recommend the handwriting bar. Like transmigration. Female supporting character calm down. Please bookmark transmigration. Female supporting character calm down. Peak. Chapter 3292. Shangguan Yungu. Based on how energetic she is, I think she'll continue to send off her child. With this old lady around, the two mischievous people in the manor won't be able to cause any big waves. The old madam's life looks fine, but in reality, she's also living a painful life. System. Host, did you give her too much tonic? The old madam is getting more energetic as she lives. Tangua, no, it's normal. She probably has a good mentality. With the two mischievous people in the manor, she's worried and wants to live a little longer. System, how long can she live? Can she increase her lifespan just by planning? In any case, he didn't believe that this was an accident. The hosts must have done it on purpose. After understanding the situation, Tangua left the group and began to read the plot of this world. After reading through the memories, Tangua sat in front of the mirror and looked at her unbelievably perfect body. She should be around 20 years old now, but she had been married for 8 years. Yes, she didn't hear wrong. The date on the marriage certificate meant that she had been married for 8 years. Of course, she couldn't have been married at the age of 12, and even gotten a marriage certificate. In a developed country, it was impossible to get a marriage certificate at the age of 12. Even in a backward country, people could only get married secretly. It was impossible to get a marriage certificate. But she took out the marriage certificate. She did get married 8 years ago. She took out her identification card and counted silently. She looked like she was 20 years old, but the age on her identification card showed that she was 30 years old. In other words, she got married when she was 22 years old. Comparing a 20-year-old woman to a 30-year-old woman. Even if a 30-year-old woman took good care of herself, there were still traces of her age. No matter how one looked at her, she looked like she was only 20 years old, or even younger. Then why was the age on her identification card 30 years old? That was because she was a clone. Yes, it was the kind of clone that copied the genes of the main body and cloned people. The name of the female lead in this world was Tangua, and she was just a clone of Tangua. None of this was done by the female lead. She had been in a coma for many years, and relied on sleeping in medical equipment to prolong her life. It was impossible for her to do such a thing. The male lead of this world was the man in the wedding photo on the wall. His name was Ouyang Shixian, and he was the CEO of a biological company. The person in the wedding photo was the real female lead, not her clone. The story started when the female lead's organs started to fail. If there was only 1 or 2 organs with their family conditions, it would be difficult to find a match. But resources would definitely be allocated first, and the chances of success would be very high. However, all of the female lead's organs were slowly failing. This wasn't an accident, nor was it a genetic problem. It was man-made. Because of some things, the female lead was forced to drink a drug that caused her organs to fail. Whether it was the Tang family or the female lead's husband, Ouyang Shixian, none of them wanted her to die. Ouyang Shixian was in charge of a biological company. On the surface, he was researching normal things. In fact, this company had a secret base where they had been researching human genes. Coincidentally, the company had come up with a new drug. If combined with the equipment, it could allow the female lead to live temporarily. However, her brain could still think, but her body could not move. It was as if she had been frozen. However, this kind of freezing could be counted as stopping time, so that the female lead's organs would stop failing. When they came up with other ways, they could bring her out to solve the problem. In the end, they thought of countless ways, but it was useless. Ouyang Shixian suddenly thought that it might be possible to use the female lead's genes to make an organ clone. However, in the end, they failed many times, and there were not many cord blood genes left. At this time, they could not wake the female lead up again. She could only exist in a life vessel. Once released, no one could predict what irreversible consequences would occur. Later on, Someone inadvertently suggested that it was possible to make a duplicate of the same body, which was a clone. When the clone matured, all of her organs would be transplanted into the female lead's body. After all, they had done it before. The experiment of cloning other animals was relatively successful. Chapter 3293. The experiment of cloning was very successful. After all, this biological company's secret laboratory had done many such experiments before. Although most of them made animal clones for research, the human body was rarely done, but it wasn't unheard of. In fact, there were many failed clones in the secret laboratory base. The success this time was not a coincidence. After the clone was completed, it was placed in a nutrient solution and needed a certain amount of time to grow. Even if the growth of the clone was accelerated, the clone would grow to be close to 20 years old, which was the limit. At this time, after many studies, it was still not possible to directly perform the transplant surgery. Even with the current medical technology, it was impossible to perform all the organ surgeries in the human body at once. After all, many transplant surgeries, just one could be done for more than 10 hours. A complete transplant was simply unimaginable. Not only would the surgeon not be able to hold on for that long, but even if they could find a few more doctors in the plan, it would be unrealistic to replace them halfway. After all, the female lead's body was actually very weak, and it was impossible for her to complete such a surgery. Therefore, before a perfect plan was found, the female lead could only exist in a life vessel and be in a state of stillness. Moreover, the female lead couldn't disappear in front of people for a long time. In the end, they decided to copy the female lead's memory and instill it into the clone, which was the original host's mind. She was released and lived with Ouyang Shixian. In this way, the original host had all the memories of the female lead. The year she was released, the female lead was 25 years old. In other words, marriage, illness, and cloning all happened in a short span of 3 years. This year was the 8th year of the female lead's marriage. She was 30 years old. In other words, the original host had lived with Ouyang Shixian for 5 years. In these 5 years, she never doubted her identity. After all, whether it was her family or her husband, they were very good to her. Even when she was married, she was like a little princess that was held in the palm of everyone's hand. Even her younger brother at home took good care of her. Almost all of her relatives were afraid that she would stumble. They didn't want her to do this. They didn't want her to do that. The memory of the female lead's illness was naturally vague. Anyway, it wasn't clear. But in her memory, it was from then on that she had been a rich lady at home who didn't do anything. Everyone knew how much Ouyang Shixian doted on her. In reality, it was Ouyang Shixian and the original owner's parents who were afraid that something would happen to her if she went out to do things. After all, the umbilical cord blood was gone. This was the only suitable organ that could be transplanted to the clone of the person they cared about. If anything were to happen to the clone, the female lead would have no chance of waking up. Now they just needed to wait for the medical technology to mature, whether it was 5 years, 10 years, or 20 years. As long as the clone was not in danger, the female lead would definitely be able to wake up on the day of the operation. The truth was just as they thought. In the end, a very powerful surgical instrument was created in this world. It was much more accurate and faster than human surgery. This was practically created for the female lead. Those who cared about the female lead were all happy. Chapter 3294. When the surgical instrument was put into use, the family Tang and Ouyang Shixian were paying attention to this matter every day. But they still didn't dare to take it lightly. After thousands of successful operations, they planned to operate on the female lead. After all, the female lead's situation was different from other people. She needed to replace all her organs in a short period of time. And with her physical condition, it wasn't suitable for a second time. Later, after a group of top experts discussed, they came up with a perfect plan. Ouyang Shixian planned to operate on the female lead. At this time, the previous host still didn't find any problems. Because her husband, her family were really good to her. She loved her family, loved her husband. How could she know that she was born just to save another person? One day, the people who had given birth to her would watch her die with their own eyes. The day before the operation, she didn't know anything. But Ouyang Shixian was at home all day and didn't let her cook. The food they ate seemed to be different. But at night, Ouyang Shixian said that the company was busy and he had to go take a look. In fact, he was just worried about the experiment and wanted to go to the secret laboratory to see the situation. In fact, every night, Ouyang Shixian would go home and accompany her. Every night she slept very deeply. She fell asleep almost as soon as she closed her eyes. That was because as long as Ouyang Shixian was there, he would make her a cup of milk with a sleeping effect. In order to not let her doubt, he would implant some memories between husband and wife. In fact, when she fell asleep, Ouyang Shixian would go to the study to spend the night. He was very clear that this was just a clone, a tool, an organ container to wake up the woman he loved the most. How could he like her? The night before the operation, the previous host tossed and turned and couldn't sleep. Suddenly she received a call. It was from her brother Tang Zhou. Tang Zhou's first words were, "Sister, you must listen to me today. Hurry up and go as far as possible." The previous host naturally didn't understand what Tang Zhou's words meant. She always liked to ask what Tang Zhou meant. Tang Zhou didn't know how to explain. He simply came to find her and took her to a temporarily safe place. "Little Zhou, why do you want me to go?" "Sister, trust me this once and leave this place." Tang Zhou was very conflicted. Although he also wanted to save his biological sister, the person in front of him was a clone of another sister. He also knew what the purpose was, but no matter what, this was a living being. The day of the operation was approaching, but he did not want her to be cruelly removed and lose her life. He hoped that his sister would wake up. He hoped that one day, there would be a suitable organ, and the surgery would be successful. However, he also knew how kind his sister was. If she knew the truth that another life form had to disappear because of him, she would definitely blame herself for the rest of her life. Perhaps it was because this was everyone's blood, sweat, and tears. She would not choose to end her own life, but she would not be happy for the rest of her life. Tang Zhou naturally wouldn't say these words to the original owner. Seeing the strange look on the original owner's face, Tang Zhou finally told him about the clone. Chapter 3295. He also said that if she didn't leave now, she would only be waiting for death. Your existence is just for another person. Tomorrow, your husband will personally send you to the operating room. Tang Zhou rubbed his hair. If I knew that he wanted to be my sister's clone, I would have stopped him. Today, nothing would have happened. Mom and Dad must know about this. Tang Zhou's face was heavy. No wonder they insisted on sending me abroad that year. They were afraid that I would stop them if I knew about this. Now that everything has been explained to you, I will send you away. I will send you to a place far away. You can hide there for a few decades, and you will be safe. I did this not only for you, but also for my sister. Tang Zhou said. She is very kind. If she knew the truth, she would never be happy, and would blame herself for the rest of her life. The original owner was very surprised at that time. She wanted to laugh and tell Tang Zhou that this was all a joke. But every clone was born with some abilities. For example, the original owner had a very good memory. It could instantly extract some useful information from past memories. If there were too many unreasonable things, it would be easy to find the problem when they were added together. In the past, because she had lived a happy life, she wouldn't do these things. Now she was doing these things subconsciously. Tang Zhou had prepared everything. When the original owner was still in a daze, he pushed her into the car and sent her to the airport. He gave her a card, a new mobile phone, and a suitcase. After pushing her in, he turned and left. The original owner didn't get on the plane. She went home. All her memories were the female leads. Those relatives were also the female leads. She was just a clone. Even if Tang Zhou sent her to the airport and prepared all the escape routes for her, she was still confused. Where could she go? She was born for the female lead. Even her thoughts were the female leads. She was not an independent person at all. She loved her parents and her husband, so she went back. That night, she didn't sleep all night. Ouyang Shixian came to pick her up in the morning. The moment the door was opened, Ouyang Shixian walked into the house. She wanted to ask him, but unexpectedly, Ouyang Shixian spoke first. Why did you come back? How could Ouyang Shixian leave a person who was about to undergo surgery alone at home? This clone was related to the life of his beloved woman. At this time, the original owner understood that even if she left yesterday, she would still be caught. Therefore, she only said, I don't know where to go. In the end, I could only return here. Since you already know and understand that you can't escape, then come with me. The original owner did not resist and left with Ouyang Shixian. She was still confused and didn't know what to do. She had been raised at home by Ouyang Shixian. Even if she had all the memories of the female lead, she did not have an independent personality. She was really just a clone. But she understood one thing. She couldn't lose Ouyang Shixian. She couldn't lose the family she loved. She thought that by fulfilling their wishes, all of this would be over. However, that was not the case. The operation was a success. It was unprecedentedly smooth. The female lead had woken up, and her body was recovering. Chapter 3296. The female lead was accompanied by her family and lived a happy life. As for the female lead's clone, which was also the clone, everyone kept it from her, thinking that she only needed to live happily. Things were a foregone conclusion. Even though Tang Zhou had countless anger and sadness in his heart, he still didn't dare to tell the truth for fear of irritating the female lead. Moreover, the family and Ouyang Shixian were afraid that Tang Zhou would talk nonsense. Basically, they didn't allow him to be alone with the female lead. The original host had been removed and was temporarily placed in a nutrient solution. Because the data showed that her vital signs had not disappeared, they decided to wait until they had time to study it. After all, this was a very successful clone. But before that, there were many things to deal with, so they didn't care about the original host for the time being. When they were almost busy and remembered the clone, they came to check her situation and found a strange thing. This matter caused everyone in the secret laboratory to be surprised. Because, in the body of the clone that had been removed, there were organs slowly growing. Although they looked very small and slow-growing, they were very sure that this was what they were thinking. When Ouyang Shixian knew about this situation, he didn't hesitate to let everyone invest in the research. They must study the principle. The original host, who was originally thought to be free, became a living experimental body. She was sliced and cruelly cut off. Over and over again, even if she had been surrounded by countless love and had countless love, she was gradually erased by these cold scalpels. She was in pain. She was in pain every day. No one could understand the pain of the body being removed again, and those organs slowly growing back. All the love and innocence in her heart had disappeared. All that was left was anger. Yes, she learned to be angry, learned to hate, learned to resist and struggle. The original host situation was not ordinary. After all was removed, it would slowly grow back. As long as there was enough nutrient solution, the growth rate was very fast. This kind of regeneration ability made Ouyang Shixian moved. Needless to say, the people in the secret laboratory were even crazier. At first, they only removed the original host's organs. Later, they cut off her fingers, her facial features. As long as it could be removed, they would remove a little bit to see if it could grow back again. Once humans mastered this kind of regeneration ability, it would be a very big breakthrough. The people in their entire laboratory would also make shocking achievements. At this time, Ouyang Shixian also received very bad news. That was, although the female lead's surgery was very successful, the new organs in the body were still deteriorating faster than normal people. It may take 10, 20, or even 30 years before the day it really deteriorated. But he absolutely would not allow the female lead to be in any danger. His main purpose was to devote himself to the research of the human organ regeneration project. If there was a drug research, the female lead would completely have no worries and could live a healthy life. After thousands of experiments, the original host had no feelings. All the grief, anger, pain, and pain. One day she had great power. Chapter 3297. She killed all the people who dissected her in the laboratory, escaped from the laboratory, and began to destroy the world. Her mind was only filled with destruction. She was like an emotionless monster, a monster born in the laboratory. She destroyed everything she saw, causing a terrible disaster to the world. She was a monster that only knew how to destroy. In the end, it was Ouyang Shixian who dealt with the original owner. Ouyang Shixian used the memories of the past to awaken the original owner and let her brain be surrounded by that sweet love. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ouyang Shixian destroyed her. The story of the original owner ended here. She was born for people, but died because of love. It could be said that she lamented her life. The environment made her unable to understand many things. In the eyes of humans, she was a bad thing. Because of her existence, she brought countless dangers to humans, destroying their buildings and homes. However, humans would never understand the reason behind this. They didn't even know that some of the skin restoration fluids sold on the market were actually extracted from countless experiments on the body of the original owner of the body with scalpels. Without the original owner, how could there be skin repair liquid in this world? How could their damaged skin be repaired? After solving the original owner's problem, the experiment on regeneration was forced to stop. In order to not cause any more trouble and accompany the female lead, Ouyang Shixian decided to close the secret laboratory. He planned to live a happy life with the female lead. He suddenly understood that life would always come to an end. Why should he spend all his energy to study those illusory things that might not succeed? It was better to slowly grow old with the person he loved. Later, Tang Zhou died in a car accident. The female lead was sad for a long time. Under the comfort of Ouyang Shixian, she slowly walked out of it. Later, the female lead's parents also died of old age. At this time, Ouyang Shixian suddenly realized that the female lead seemed to have not smiled for a long time, especially to him. But he didn't ask why. They just passed their life like this, pretending to be very happy. These were all the memories. Tang Gua carefully looked through them. At the side, the system had also watched it many times. Every time the host said that he didn't look carefully. Recently, he looked through them several times, so he shouldn't miss any important information. Madam Host, does the female lead know something? In the end, her reaction seemed a little strange. She probably knows something, but I don't know what exactly she knows. After all, there was no mental activity related to the female lead in his memories. But it was a fact that the female lead's later life was very unhappy. There was still some time before he was pushed to the operating table. Regardless of whether the time was up or not, Tang Gua did not intend to be pushed to the operating table. She would not allow her organs to be removed while she was still alive. Since he was here, he definitely wasn't here to be abused. Ouyang Shixian only treated the clone as a tool. Even if he had his own goals and persistence, this clone was already her. So they were enemies. Didn't Ouyang Shixian want to save the female lead? She thought of a perfect plan. But she didn't know if Ouyang Shixian would be willing to save the female lead. Chapter 3298. While there was still time, Tang Gua communicated with the people in the group about this world. Everyone still told her to be careful. No matter what happened, no matter what she did, the first thing she had to protect was herself. Even if she was very powerful, the people in the group never ignored this advice. Especially Margaret, who told Tang Gua to live well. She was afraid that she would have an accident and couldn't go to the magic world in the end. This made everyone in the group dumbfounded. Tang Gua's current situation is that of a rich wife at home. It seems that in the memories instilled in her, her body is relatively weak. It's not suitable for strenuous exercise, nor is it suitable for long-distance travel. She was even warned not to eat any stimulating food. In fact, slowly from these clues in life, the original owner may have found something strange. But she was born with memories and full of trust to the people around her. Even if there were countless things wrong in the place, she didn't think about guessing anything. Because in her memory of more than 20 years, her parents had always doted on her as a little princess, and were reluctant to let her suffer a little. Her husband, Ouyang Shixian, was also like a jewel, holding her in the palm of his hand. What she suspected, She wouldn't doubt these relatives. Tang Guo watched TV at home for a while. It was still early before Ouyang Shixian came back in the evening, so she decided to go to her parents' house. This time she went alone. In the past, no matter where she went, her parents and Ouyang Shixian would let her know in advance and arrange for someone to pick her up. Maybe she was more obedient before, so Ouyang Shixian didn't arrange anyone to watch her. Tang Guo followed the behavior in the memory, went to the garage to get the car, and then drove to her parents' house. The distance between the two houses was only half an hour. As soon as she left, Ouyang Shixian received the message that she left home. When Tang Guo was driving, the system helped to catch that someone was following her. Not only was there someone following her, but the system had scanned before, and all the cars in the garage had invisible cameras and trackers. Obviously, Ouyang Shixian had prepared these for a long time just in case. Do they have a connection with Ouyang Shixian? Host there on the phone. Sure enough, as I thought. Let's go to the female lead's parents' house first, and let Ouyang Shixian worry. A faint smile hung on the corner of Tang Guo's lips. From now on I am a clone. Maybe in the eyes of many clones, a clone is not a person, but just a tool for the survival of mankind. But in the eyes of our clones, a clone is also a life, and it needs to be respected. We have human genes. We want to live well in this world. We want to be loved. We want to be cared for. And we want to live a stable life in this world. But the human beings who made us are the human beings to make us. If the body has no other purpose, the end will be destroyed. As a naturally reproduced human, perhaps they would understand this kind of cooking. However, I'm now a clone. The system seemed to have heard something, so it just listened quietly. Chapter 3299. Because in those memories, not only was the original owner being experimented on and cut up for research, but there were also other clones gradually being born. After the original owner was successfully cloned, the laboratory began to fully research clones. Many participants used their own genes to do this experiment. Now in the secret laboratory, there were many clones. There were finished products, semi-finished products, and even clones like Tang Guo that had already been brought out. Of course, there was one that was put into use, but its organs were removed to provide clones to the original owner. In the end, of course, it was destroyed. In the later part of the plot, in order to prevent the clones from causing any more trouble, Ouyang Shixian decisively blew up the island. Not only were there thousands of clones, but there were also some researchers. He destroyed everything, because he wanted to hide the secret that he would never tell the female lead. In order to not let the female lead know the truth, he used all means and almost lost his humanity, thinking that he could exchange it for a stable and happy life. I also suspect Tang Zhou's death. Tang Guo silently said to the system, the female lead's brother's death is too strange. Don't you think so? Actually, when I read it, I found out that he died in a car accident. I remember it said that Tang Zhou was a racer, right? He was professionally trained. When he was racing, he had many car accidents. Because of safety precautions, he only had minor injuries. But when he died, it was a bit strange. The main reason was that his death was too strange. He suspected that Ouyang Shixian did it, but he had no evidence. Half an hour later, Tang Guo arrived at the family Tang. Xiao Guo, why did you come here alone? Mother Tang Guo walked in front of her with a worried face. How can you run around? Your health is not good. What if something happens? Next time you go out, tell Shixian and ask him to arrange a driver for you. Or call us and ask us to arrange for someone to pick you up. Tang Guo noticed that although Mother Tang's face was full of worry, there was not much affection in her eyes. The anxiety in her eyes was more like she was afraid that she would be lost and not be found. When that happened, it would lead to terrible consequences. Did the original owner not notice such an obvious look in her eyes? Perhaps she had discovered it, but it was just an illusion from her memory that made her subconsciously ignore it. Since the child is here, let her in. Father Tang looked much calmer and quickly called her in. He was slightly different from the Father Tang in her memory. The Father Tang here looked a little more serious. In her memory, every time Father Tang saw her, he would smile lovingly. Clearly, Even if this person looked like their daughter, had the same genes as their daughter, and even had their daughter's memories, they could clearly tell that this person was not their daughter. Being courteous and caring to her was just an organ in her body that could allow their daughter to truly wake up. She did not see any other emotions in the couple's eyes, so Tangwa did not feel conflicted. Of course, a clone could not be compared to their beloved biological daughter. It should be said that there was no comparison at all. Therefore, she did not expect that the couple would have any pity for her. In order to save their daughter, parents who loved their daughter would do anything crazy. Chapter 3300. Tangwa's mother still went to cook enthusiastically. Perhaps they had been instructed, but Tangwa could see that they were deliberately maintaining the way they used to get along with her. Perhaps it was because she was different now, so their behavior was a little stiff. After dinner, I'll arrange for the driver to send you back. You're not in good health, so don't run around. If Xixian finds out, he'll be so worried that he'll look for you all over the world. Tangwa's mother said reproachfully. At this moment, there was some sadness in her eyes. She was probably sad for Ouyang Xixian. After all, he hadn't had a few happy days with the female lead before she almost died. Now he was busy saving the female lead and doing such things. From their point of view, of course, they would be touched by Ouyang Xixian's infatuation and also sad. Yes, the next time you go out, you must inform Xixian, Tangwa's father said. Do you still remember what happened in the past? After you got into a conflict, you went missing. Xixian stopped all the operations of the company in order to find you. Next time, don't let him worry. Yes, Xixian is too difficult. Tangwa's mother chimed in. Where are you going? Tell us in advance or tell Xixian. We'll accompany you. Xiaogua, you're already married. Now Xixian is busy with work every day. If it's not something particularly important, just call us. In fact, Tangwa's parents were looking forward to the day of the operation every day. That way, their real daughter would be able to wake up. Facing the clone in front of them, even though she looked the same, they never treated her as a real life form. In their eyes, she was just a tool. Perhaps everything she had was a copy of the female lead, which made them feel that this person was just a vessel and not a real person. Why can't I go out alone? I don't wander around. I just go out to relax, go shopping with a few friends and watch movies. Haven't these things always been done in the past? Tangwa asked. As soon as she finished speaking, the couple was stunned because this was the first time Tangwa had questioned them. To them, it was this clone who only knew how to listen. For the first time, she asked what she wanted to do instead of obediently following their arrangements. Compared to before, she seemed to be more lively. The couple didn't think of how to answer this question. Yes, why couldn't she go out alone? Go shopping with a few friends, watch movies, and buy something she liked. Wasn't this the life an ordinary person should have? Dad, Mom, I'm actually very healthy. I tried it at home. I can swim 10 times in one breath, and I won't be too tired. What a joke. It was a clone after all. In fact, its genes had already been strengthened. On top of that, it was in the best environment for growth. Otherwise, it wouldn't have developed a regenerative constitution in the later stages, or even awakened a powerful strength. The couple was even more speechless, but Mother Tang still forced herself to say, as parents, we're always worried about our little princess. Ever since you fell sick, your parents and I have been worried about you going out alone. Xiaogua, don't make us worry. This was indeed a very good reason. They had blurred out the original owner's memory of organ failure and gave it to her. Chapter 3301. In her memory, there was indeed a time when she was seriously ill and almost died. There was nothing wrong with this explanation. In order to dissuade Tangwa from going out alone, the couple cried in front of her and pretended to be worried and upset. They looked as if they were afraid of losing her and tried to get her to come back to her senses. This was because this was the only clone that could save their daughter. If Tangwa went missing, or if someone found out that something was wrong, it would be dangerous for their daughter. In addition, human cloning was not allowed in this world. It was against the rules of humanity. Many years ago, research on human cloning was prohibited. However, there were still many organizations that were secretly researching it. If the existence of this clone was discovered, those people would definitely not let it go. The couple was still talking when there was a sudden sound at the door. The door was pushed open, and a handsome young man in a racing uniform walked in. He was carrying a peeping bag, and looked very handsome. The young man first looked at Tang Gua, then at Father and Mother Tang. He smiled and said, "Dad, Mom, I heard from the door that you were afraid that my sister would go missing. What's going on?" This young man was Tang Zhou. He walked in with a face full of smiles. His eyes swept over Tang Gua for a moment and dimmed slightly. He looked at the dishes on the table and said, "Dad, Mom, you are really biased. Sister is here, but you made such delicious food. When I was at home, when I was hungry, you just let the auntie make something. It looks like Mom personally cooked today. I can already smell the familiar aroma. Since you can smell it, quickly wash your hands and come over to eat." Mother Tang smiled and greeted Tang Zhou. Compared to before, she looked at Tang Zhou with joy and love from the bottom of her heart. She clearly did not expect Tang Zhou to come back at this time. "Ah Zhou, didn't you say that you would only be back next week?" Tang Zhou washed his hands and came out of the kitchen. He scooped a bowl of rice for himself and sat at his usual seat. He first took a big bite of rice, and then a bite of a familiar dish. He swallowed and said, "The competition is over. I wanted to stay overseas for a few days to have fun, but it seemed like there was nothing to do. It was the same events every year. It was quite boring, so I came back early." The couple was not surprised by Tang Zhou's words. Tang Zhou was a professional racer. The Tang family did not lack money. Their son had some hobbies, and they supported him. Even if he didn't support him, he couldn't. This kid was very stubborn. However, Tang Zhou had promised that he would only play with traffic jams until he was 30 years old. When he was 30 years old, he would immediately retire and come back to take over the company. Because he was afraid that his parents would be worried, he would check the car, his equipment, and the safety measures before each race. Even if he was in danger several times, he was very professional and protected himself well. He was much luckier than many racers. In addition, his physical condition was not bad, and he was young, so the chances of something happening to him were actually very small. "By the way, Dad, Mom, I heard you guys talking at the door. Is this going out?" Tang Zhou asked. Mother Tang told her about how Tang Gua said she wanted to go shopping and buy things, and how they tried to persuade her. "Mom and Dad are busy with the company, and brother-in-law is also very busy. I think I have the most free time now. Why don't I accompany sister to go shopping for a while? It's not good to be cooped up in the house every day. What do you think?" Vertex. Chapter 3302. Tang Zhou's suggestion actually made the couple a little hesitant. This was within Tang Gua's expectations. Although Tang Zhou was in his 20s, he was full of vitality and always had a pure heart. He looked like a strong man, but in fact his heart was extremely benevolent. When he was young, he was the kind of person who would not even be willing to step on a small ant. Back then, they had thought of ways to send Tang Zhou abroad for the cloning matter. They only knew the truth when Tang Zhou came back. No, if it were not for the fact that they could not hide it anymore, they would not have told Tang Zhou. For a period of time, Tang Zhou taught them the meaning of life every day. No matter what kind of life it was, it should be respected. He also told them that his sister was such a kind and simple person. If she knew that her life was exchanged for another person's life, even if it was a clone's life, she would live in uneasiness and guilt for the rest of her life. She would die of pain. If his sister woke up, she would rather die than have such an ending. Of course, Tang Zhou did not succeed. The couple looked like they had aged 20 years because of his sister, which made him feel bad. He had been abroad all these years, not only to participate in the racing competition, but also to find a way to save his sister. For the time being, he could not think of a way to save Tang Gua's clone. There had been no suitable surgery plan. This was good news for him. At least it would buy him a lot of time. However, in the end, Tang Zhou still failed. "Mom, Dad, let Zhou accompany me. I haven't seen Zhou in a long time." Tang Gua spoke at this time. She felt that there was something wrong with her brother. She needed to observe him closely to see what was hidden in his heart. If the couple refused to let her brother accompany her shopping, there would be a big problem. Okay, then it's settled. After the couple agreed, Tang Zhou said happily, "After lunch, I'll take my sister shopping, buy her a beautiful dress, and watch a movie with her. Speaking of which, after my sister got married, she hasn't gone out with me for a long time." After lunch, when Tang Guo was not paying attention, Mrs. Tang gave Tang Zhou a look and called him to the room. Father Tang, on the other hand, kept talking to divert Tang Guo's attention. Tang Guo pretended not to know anything and watched them act. "Ah Zhou, you can't ruin your brother-in-law's plans. As long as we find a suitable plan, your real sister can come back." Mrs. Tang warned him. "No matter how much she resembles your sister and has your sister's memories, she's still not your sister. Ah Zhou, you have to understand. Ah Zhou, I know you're kind-hearted, but you can't even bear to kill an ant. But the person we need to save is your sister. She is the only one who can save your sister. Are you going to watch your sister die like this?" "Mom, have you thought about how happy sister will be when she wakes up and finds out about all this? Xian has already promised us that we will never tell her about this. As long as you don't say anything and we don't say anything, Xiaoguo will never know and will continue to live happily. Ah Zhou, Mom is begging you, okay?" As she spoke, Mrs. Tang was about to kneel in front of Tang Zhou. Tang Zhou quickly held her and said in a low voice, "Mom, she's very pitiful. I just want to treat her better. She won't be able to see this world in the future. I just want to accompany her to do something she likes. She hasn't seen this world yet, and you're going to take her life away. I just pity her. Otherwise I'll feel bad." Chapter 3303. Alright. Mrs. Tang finally relented. "Then you can only take her out for a walk. You can't do anything else. Ah Zhou, you have to take care of Xiaoguo, who's been sleeping in a life vessel for so many years." "Ah Zhou, do you want your sister Xiaoguo to wake up?" Mrs. Tang asked. Tang Zhou's expression turned serious. "Of course I do. I look forward to the day when she wakes up in my room and rudely flips my blanket aside. If that's the case, then go with her." Tang Zhou's mother was moved by Tang Zhou's words. She wasn't a heartless person, but with the situation in front of her, her final choice was to save her daughter. Buy her whatever she wants. You're right, she's also a life. It wasn't that she and Mr. Tang didn't know this was a life, but compared to their daughter's life, they could only be more selfish. They constantly gave themselves hints. They hinted that this was a human clone, and that this was the only way to save their daughter. No matter how much this clone looked like her, and had her daughter's memories, she wasn't their biological daughter. "Mom, actually, I've been abroad looking for other ways to save my sister all these years," Tang Zhou said. "When I found out the truth, I was thinking that if I could find a more perfect solution, she wouldn't have to be sacrificed." Mrs. Tang was shocked for a moment, then quickly asked, "Did you find it?" Mrs. Tang was naturally willing to save her daughter without harming any other life forms. If they harmed people, they would be able to save the people they wanted to save. No one would be unwilling to do so. Ah Zhou was right. Her daughter was really kind. They had done well all these years. In the future, they would have to find a way to hide the truth from their daughter. Unfortunately, no. There may be the most advanced medical equipment and surgical equipment in the world, but it's not so coincidental that all the organs can be found at the same time. Mrs. Tang's eyes dimmed. "Ah Zhou, you go. Wherever she wants to go, you go with her. Satisfy her needs if she needs anything." Mrs. Tang didn't want to continue this topic. She was afraid that if she talked too much about this clone, the more she thought it was a real person, the more she couldn't be at ease. If she couldn't harden her heart, her daughter Xiaoguo would never wake up. "Sister, where do you want to go? Let's go. Today, I will only accompany you." Tang Zhou's performance was just like his memory, as if there was no difference. He intimately pulled Tang Guo off the sofa and greeted Father and Mother Tang, before pushing her to change her shoes. "I don't have much to do these days. I know my sister is bored at home, so my mission is to accompany you. Wherever you want to go, I'll go with you. Just like when we were young, wherever I wanted to go, my sister would go with me." Actually, the relationship between Tang Zhou and the female lead was very good. The two siblings basically talked about everything. Tang Zhou was definitely one of the people who looked forward to the female lead waking up. Let's go shopping first, Tang Gua said. The snack street. She found this in her memory. When they were young, the two siblings would often go to the food street together. Chapter 3304. Obviously, they were not people who could eat spicy food, but they would go home with red lips and get scolded by the couple. In fact, it was Tang Zhou who was greedy, so the female lead took him with her. Okay, then we'll go to the food street first. We'll go to the food street and eat what we like. Then we'll go to some places with good scenery. We'll come back to watch a movie in the evening. I've seen a new movie recently. It's time. Tang Zhou changed his shoes and said this when he pushed the door open. His behavior made the family Tang couple feel relieved. Accompanying Tang Gua to do these things showed that Tang Zhou had made a choice in his heart and would not stop this matter. Tang Zhou had just taken Tang Gua out when the family Tang couple received a call from Ouyang Xixian. Xixian, Father Tang sighed. You don't have to worry. Zhou did take Xiao Gua out, but I think this child should have thought it through. Now he's going to take her to play and accompany her to do what she wants to do. Is that so? Ouyang Xixian was actually not sure if Tang Zhou understood. Then I'd better arrange two people to follow them. Even if little Zhou understands, if something happens to her, Xiaoguo will not have a chance to wake up again. Okay, you arrange it. Zhou is not a bad child. He's as kind-hearted as his sister. I'm only doing this because I feel bad. Actually, aren't we the same? If it weren't for the fact that Xiao Gua is married to you and doesn't live at home, facing such a living person every day after so many years together, we might not be able to bear it. Dad, don't think so much. You just miss Xiao Gua too much. When I'm free, I'll pick you up and take you to see Xiao Gua. When you see the real Xiao Gua, you won't think so. The conversation between the two ended quickly. Basically, it revolved around the female lead. On the other side, Tang Zhou had taken Tang Gua to the food street. After spending 2 hours in the food street, they went to a place with good scenery on the edge of the city. They rushed back at about 7 o'clock and went to see the movie that they had booked in advance. When Tang Zhou sent Tang Gua home, it was a little past 11 o'clock. When the car arrived at the door, Tang Gua saw a person standing at the door. The lights in the villa were on, but the door was dark. The figure at the door was a little tall, and there was a small spark moving. When Tang Zhou stopped the car at the door, the spark suddenly disappeared. It was Ouyang Xixian, the great host. He had been waiting here for a few hours. Sis, we're home. Tang Zhou opened the car door and brought Tang Gua out. Look, brother-in-law is really worried about you. As a younger brother, I'm taking my sister out to play, but he's still worried. I'm just afraid that you'll lose Xiao Gua. You've always been reckless and never serious. The fact that I waited here and didn't send anyone to find you is already the greatest trust one can give you. Ouyang Xixian walked over and said to Tang Zhou with a deep expression. When Tang Zhou first found out about the clones, he still remembered clearly how much of a fuss Tang Zhou made. In just a few years, Tang Zhou actually figured it out. It was really a little unbelievable. For the time being, he didn't believe that Tang Zhou really figured it out. Brother-in-law, sister has already sent you back. Quickly pick up your baby, Tang Zhou said with a relaxed face. Chapter 3305. I have nothing to do recently. I heard that you are also very busy. I will come to pick up my sister every day to play. Tang Zhou saw Ouyang Xixian's obviously disapproving eyes and said, If you are worried that I will lose my sister, you can arrange a driver for me. It's better to arrange a few bodyguards. Anyway, my sister is also Mrs. Ouyang. Not to mention 2 bodyguards, even 20 bodyguards will not be wasted. Ouyang Xixian carefully observed Tang Zhou and found that his expression was normal. It seemed that he really understood. Well, it's as if I don't let you two meet. It was okay to arrange people on the surface, but it was definitely necessary in the dark. Whether Tang Zhou would be tempted or not, it was best to arrange people to watch. There must not be any problems with this clone. When Xiao Guo woke up, It would depend on her. He had received news that a company had developed a very advanced surgical equipment, but it was not mature in all aspects. But once the experiment of this surgical equipment was successful, after tens of thousands of times of use, Xiaoguo might be able to perform the major operation. Tang Guo felt Ouyang Xixian's thoughts, and she also knew the time. For this advanced surgical equipment, Ouyang Xixian also invested a lot of money in that company. He almost threw in his life, and even spent money to hire some patients to try this surgical equipment. Perhaps Ouyang Xixian really liked the female lead, but he was not a good person, because in his eyes, only the female lead's life was important. The lives of others were lower than grass, and could be sacrificed at any time. Tang Zhou had left, and Ouyang Xixian and Tang Guo returned to the house. Why do you suddenly want to go out? I have been bored at home. I found that my health has been very good recently, so I want to go out. Tang Guo replied with a normal face. In fact, my health is really good. Xixian, you don't have to worry too much. You are just too careful. Going out for a walk may make my health better. Ouyang Xixian was silent for a moment, and then said, Yes, since Xiao Zhou has time to accompany you recently, I am relieved. These days, I am really busy and neglected you. No, you're very good to me. What you need to do is work. How can you accompany me at home every day? Ouyang Xixian looked at Tang Guo's face and suddenly said, When I'm done, I'll accompany you every day. Wherever you want to go, I'll accompany you. Whether you want me to accompany you or not. How can it be little Zhou's turn? Tang Guo understood that Ouyang Xixian's words weren't actually directed at her, but at her face. Ouyang Xixian said those words to the female lead. That's right. Her face was exactly the same as the female lead's. It was a complete copy. Anyone who was familiar with the female lead would have hallucinations if they looked at her for a long time. Even if they knew what was going on, they still couldn't help but reveal their emotions. The milk is already warm. I'll get it for you. Every time Ouyang Xixian couldn't control his emotions, he would get a glass of milk for the original owner. When she fell asleep, he would go to the study to calm down. He was different from the people in the family. He did not pity this clone. It was just that when he saw her, he could not help but think of his true love. Occasionally, he could not control himself, and needed to find an excuse to avoid her. Chapter 3306. For the next few days, Tang Zhou would pick up Tang Guo every morning under Ouyang Xixian's nose to play. Ouyang Xixian also gradually believed that Tang Zhou should have accepted this fact. According to the information he received, Tang Zhou was taking Tang Guo to play the fun things in the world and eat delicious food. This approach seemed to be compensating her. For this reason, Ouyang Xixian was a little relieved, but he still sent people to watch their whereabouts. Time passed quickly. Tang Zhou had taken Tang Guo to play every day for 2 months. During this time, they didn't come back every day. The family Tang couple agreed with Tang Zhou's approach, although they couldn't do these things. Ouyang Xixian didn't agree, but he couldn't resist the persuasion of the family Tang people. They thought that they should compensate Tang Guo. After all, she would never see this world again in the future. Tang Zhou took Tang Guo to many worlds. One day, they sat on a stone on a mountain and chatted. As they chatted, they talked to a distant place. Tang Zhou suddenly said, Sister, do you believe in the existence of clones? In fact, when Tang Zhou first appeared, Tang Guo knew that there was something wrong with Tang Zhou. When she asked this question, she was even more certain. Is it the kind of clones in the movies? Of course. Tang Zhou didn't deliberately take Tang Guo to see this type of movie. He just took Tang Guo to see every movie that was released. There was always a theme of clones in it. Even Ouyang Xixian didn't think that this was intentional. Yes, it's the kind in the movies. Maybe in the future. Tang Zhou shook his head and said with a smile, Sister, in fact, in this world, many secret laboratories have been studying clones for many years. Although this project is banned all over the world, the temptation of clones is too great. Many people can't resist such temptation. This is a very cruel experiment. Yes, it's really cruel, Tang Zhou said again. Sister, if one day someone tells you that you are actually a clone, just like the plot in the movies, your existence may be for others to live, or it may be to provide a part of your body for others. At that time, what kind of reaction will you have? Zhou, have you watched too many movies? Why do you think of this? Sister, answer my question first. Tang Zhou looked very serious. If one day, you are really a clone, and your existence is just to provide a body part or an organ for someone, what will you do? Now that he had shown her the beauty of this world and told her the truth in advance, would she still be the same as before? Would she still go back foolishly and wait for her body to be taken away and eventually become an even more pitiful experimental subject? It wasn't that he didn't want to save his sister, but his sister didn't need such treatment at all. He especially remembered that one day before the accident, at 3 o'clock in the morning, he suddenly received a call from his sister. The older sister's voice was trembling as she choked out, Zhou, tell me what happened while I was asleep. At that time, things were already set in stone. Even if he told the truth, there was no way to change the outcome. Even though he was condemned by his conscience day and night, he still didn't tell her the truth when she questioned him. Vertex. Chapter 3307. Sis, did you have a nightmare? Nothing special happened when you were asleep. Don't think too much. This was Tang Zhou's answer at the time. In fact, when he answered this, he tried his best to control his voice so that it didn't sound like he was lying. However, the two of them grew up together, and the one who interacted with him the most was his sister. She could easily tell if he was lying or not. Zhou, you've changed. You're not the Zhou I know. Mom and Dad lied to me, Xian lied to me, everyone around me lied to me. The female lead's voice sounded helpless at night. I seem to be living in a world of lies. I thought you wouldn't lie to me, but you've learned to lie. Zhou, I live in pain, do you know that? Every night is difficult for me. Zhou, do you know the feeling of my organs being dug out, my fingers being cut off, my eyeballs being taken out, my teeth being pulled out, and my flesh being cut? That's not all. The most painful thing is that those things that have been removed will slowly grow back. Zhou, can you understand such pain? When he heard this, he was shocked. He only knew that his sister might have understood something. She was very unhappy every day. No matter how Ouyang Xixian treated her, she couldn't smile like before. He didn't know the truth behind it. Sis. Zhou, I've known everything for a long time. They study the human body. Did they forget the memory of organs? That was the first time he felt that his sister's voice was heartbreaking. My body is full of her organs. I know what happened to her. In fact, these memories are still increasing. Perhaps this is my punishment for taking her life. I won't choose to die. I'll live. I'll live and endure this unbearable suffering day and night. This is the price I should pay. I should experience the pain she experienced over and over again. At that time, he didn't know what to say. He had a very important competition abroad and couldn't leave for the time being. But he had already decided that after this competition, he would immediately go back and talk to his sister about the memory of organs. No one expected things to be like this, but he didn't have the chance. He never thought that Ouyang Xixian would never trust him. It was because of that long call that night that Ouyang Xixian decided to never let him go back. Ouyang Xixian probably didn't know the content of the call. Since his sister was able to call him for so long, she was not stupid. She must be prepared. However, it was still easy to check the call records. Ouyang Xixian probably wanted to tell his sister the truth, so he arranged for someone to move his car. The person who did it was probably one of the assistants around him. In this regard, he had always been very careful. Other than Ouyang Xixian, he could not think of anyone else. He didn't know what happened after that. The moment he closed and opened his eyes, he had actually returned to the past, a time before everything had happened. Remembering his sister's heartbreaking cries of pain and despair that night, he decided that no matter what, he had to prevent this from happening again. Even if he could only watch helplessly as his beloved sister died, it was still better than letting her suffer those terrible memories day and night. Zhou, you're distracted. Tang Gua interrupted Tang Zhou. By the way, why did you ask me those strange questions just now? Perhaps she already knew what Tang Zhou was up to. Chapter 3308. Sister, answer my question first. If one day someone tells you that you are a clone, and the reason for your existence is to save another person, what will you do? Tang Zhou asked again patiently. It was undeniable that he wanted to help the clone escape from all of this, mostly because of his sister. It was also undeniable that he also wanted to help her. He pitied her. He really pitied her. Especially when he thought of what had happened. She was a clone. Her memories and feelings were all given to her by someone else. But in the end, she also had her own consciousness and knew how to resist. At that time, she should be considered a real person. The most ridiculous thing was that Ouyang Shixian actually used the feelings he gave her to restrain and defeat her. In the end, he destroyed her and made her disappear from this world. He didn't know what happened to her in the laboratory, but from the news he heard from his sister that night, coupled with the fact that she appeared again later, like an emotionless monster, he already knew that she must have encountered a lot of bad things. He originally thought that after saving his sister, she had disappeared. Because of this, he felt guilty every day, and his heart was especially uncomfortable. Later, he thought of a way to persuade Ouyang Shixian to give her a way out. But it was useless. Because at that time, she had already become the public enemy of mankind. Even if Ouyang Shixian was willing to let her go, the World Organization would not let her go. Being destroyed was her final destination. Sister, have you thought about how to answer? No, I thought about it seriously for a while just now, Tang Gua said. If I was told that I was a clone, I don't know what to do. Tang Zhou was not surprised at this answer. At that time, if he didn't directly send her on the plane and think that she could escape, but sent someone to follow her, or personally sent her to a certain place, perhaps she wouldn't have chosen to stay. One day, she was suddenly told that she was just a clone. The home that originally belonged to her, her place, and the people who were familiar with her had nothing to do with her. Anyone who knew this fact would be confused. At that time, he only wanted to get her out of here. But he didn't think about this. This time was different. He would help her get rid of all of this. Really get rid of all of this. Then think about what to do. Tang Zhou said, Sis, think about it carefully. If you're really what I said, what's the best way for you to do? You don't have to stand in the perspective of others. You just have to stand in the perspective of a clone. You can combine it with the plot in the movie. What do you think? Tang Zhou was instilling self-awareness into the clone, Tang Gua, so that she would realize that she was a living being, and not a tool at the mercy of others. Many years ago, this world had issued a rule that human cloning was also a human being, and all experiments on human cloning were prohibited. Can clones coexist with humans? Tang Gua did not answer Tang Zhou's question. Instead, she asked, according to the description in the movie, clones will be stronger than normal clones. They might even awaken some special powers. The humans in the movie did not expect such a result at the beginning of their research on cloning. When the appearance of clones threatens the status of humans, humans will be afraid. They will then control and even destroy the clones. Chapter 3309. The world has issued regulations that prohibit the research of human cloning. There may be such an idea. Once the clones are really stronger than humans, the number of clones will gradually increase, and they may replace humans in the future. Because they are the clones of a certain human individual. They have the genes of that individual, and are exactly the same as that individual. When Tang Zhou was speechless, Tang Gua continued. In fact, there will always be people who secretly do cloning experiments, because there are huge temptations and benefits. Even if the clones were used as tools in the beginning, they are already humans. They have been oppressed for a long time, and one day they will awaken the consciousness of resistance. Zhou, the clones and humans can't coexist. They are all humans, but they are different humans. The main body will not allow its clones to replace itself. It should be said that most of the main bodies will be afraid of being replaced by clones. Most of the main bodies. If one of their organs is damaged and someone provides them with a clone, the chances of them accepting it are very high. Sister, your answer is almost the same as not answering. Tang Zhou was actually a little happy. It seemed that the efforts of the past 2 months were not in vain. She had realized many things. From the perspective of a clone, she also had the consciousness of resistance. That day was coming. If he sent her away at the last minute, he didn't know what would happen in the middle. The reason why he chose to talk to Tang Guo on this mountain was that he was afraid that it would be easy to be discovered by Ouyang Shixian's people in the city. Ouyang Shixian didn't know that they were climbing the mountain. Even if someone followed them quietly, they couldn't get too close. Now they were sitting here. The surrounding area was empty. Only at the bottom of the hill, there were a few people. The person who followed them should be among them. It was not easy to find such an opportunity. Of course, Tang Zhou would not let it go. He had to say it sooner or later. It was better to say it early and give her some time to think. I want to tell you a secret. Tang Zhou's voice suddenly became smaller. He leaned closer to Tang Guo with a smile on his face. From afar, it didn't seem like he was sharing a secret. Instead, he was talking about something happy. What I'm going to say to you is true. Don't doubt it. Even if you don't believe it, don't show a surprised or scared look. If possible, I will tell you. Tang Guo nodded cooperatively and looked at Tang Zhou curiously. Actually, you're a clone. Tang Zhou revealed the secret. Don't say anything. Let me finish. You're a clone of my sister. If you don't believe me, I'll show you this. Tang Zhou took out his mobile phone and showed a photo to Tang Guo. Look at this, and you'll know that I'm not lying to you. Look at this person. Doesn't she look exactly like you? Tang Guo looked at the phone screen. The picture was of the female lead sleeping in the life vessel. She looked the same as Tang Guo. It had to be said that this method was indeed very credible. Don't look surprised, especially panicked. You're afraid that Ouyang Shixian's people have been watching us. He doesn't trust me and is afraid that I'll let you go. For the past 2 months, he's sent people to watch us. Tang Zhou's face was full of sarcasm. He didn't believe that Ouyang Shixian didn't know that his sister was so unhappy. Chapter 33:10. If something happened to the person sleeping next to him, he would more or less notice. Didn't he like his sister very much? As a result, when his sister was unhappy, he pretended not to notice anything and treated his sister the same as before. He didn't care about what happened to his sister at all. He even got rid of him. Didn't Ouyang Shixian know that his sister's relationship with him was the deepest? How painful would it be for her to lose her brother? Ouyang Shixian was a selfish person. He just wanted to imprison his sister by his side. Zhou, are you joking? Anything can be joked about, but this is definitely not a joke. Tang Zhou said very seriously. He stared into Tang Guo's eyes. Actually, you already believe it, don't you? Don't rush to answer me. They haven't found a reasonable solution yet. They won't do anything to you for the time being, but that day will come. At that time, if you don't think about it, they will send you to the operating table. They will take out all your organs and give them to my sister. If it's true, why are you telling me this? It's obvious that you can save your so-called real sister. According to normal thinking, you should support it, right? Tang Guo asked. Tang Zhou chuckled. You're right. If it can save my sister, even if it's not good, I should support it. We're siblings. Why wouldn't I want her to wake up? But my sister is a kind person. She's really kind. She's different from me. I'm not that kind. It's just because my sister is so kind that I consciously want to be a kind person. I value life and I'm a kind person. She definitely wouldn't want her life to be sacrificed for another person. If she knew the truth, she would live in pain and guilt for the rest of her life. Tang Zhou said very frankly, although he respected life and respected it, in front of the most important person, sometimes everything seemed so insignificant. It was because he cared about this person and valued this person that he cared about her thoughts and chose to do this. He always told people that he was just an ordinary person. The only really good person was his sister. You still have time to think. When you understand, no matter where you go, I will help you. However, you must understand early. The closer you get to that day, the tighter Ouyang Shixian will watch you. At that time, if I want to take you out, it will be a lot more difficult. If you still have doubts in your heart, it's better to take advantage of this time to observe. By the way, you should try not to drink milk every night. You should be able to find something. There are sleeping pills in the milk. If you want to see me, just call me directly. You say that you want me to go shopping with you. It was a matter of course for a younger brother to accompany his elder sister and carry her bag. Now, Ouyang Shixian should think that I'm doing to compensate for you. As for the rest, don't say it over the phone. When we can talk about it, I'll take the initiative to mention it. System. Actually, you don't need to be so careful. With a powerful system like him, he could say whatever he wanted. Even if he made a long speech on the phone, it would not be a problem. That Ouyang bastard would not know anything. It's windy. I'll send you back. After a long time, Ouyang Shixian will start thinking about other things. Tomorrow, I'll come over and take you out to play. Chapter 33:11. Tang Gua and Tang Zhou played outside for a week. Of course, it was under the surveillance of the people arranged by Ouyang Shixian. During this time, the two of them didn't take the initiative to talk about cloning. Tang Zhou was actually very anxious. If Tang Gua still didn't understand and didn't want to leave, he didn't know what to do. At present, Tang Gua had been home for several days. She didn't observe Ouyang Shixian as Tang Zhou said. After all, she was no longer the original owner. There was no need to do these things to alert the enemy. She had already thought about what to do in this world. Now she was discussing this matter with her friends in the group. Ziyin. So sister's plan is to save the female lead? School bell. Of course, I think she's good. Qi Xiao. But her situation doesn't seem to be very good. According to what you said before, taking things like pills to recuperate, I don't know if it's useful. The main thing is whether her body can bear it or not. Especially if all of her organs have problems. Pills that are too strong won't work. Pills that are too gentle will be too slow. If there are other substances in the body that destroy organs, these substances must be removed first. Moyuntian. Yes, it's also a troublesome thing. Emmanuel. At this time, it's time to look at my side. Genetic modification agent, genetic repair agent. Have you heard of it? I think the disease that the school bell said should be caused by drugs containing radiation. If she only takes your pills, when the two forces clash, it may not be good for her. Using the words of the Interstellar, the disease will be cured. Also, the Interstellar also forbids human cloning, but we only have the technology to clone human organs. However, after many years of research, the cloned organs are not as good as the ones grown by humans. As for why this is, we are still researching. When the school bell came here, she also knew that the people here, from the outside cultivation of children to the mother's body in the end, she knew that there are still many unsolved mysteries in the human body. Margaret, I may not have any way to cure the girl who sounds very kind, but I have developed a talisman that should be useful for the school bell. As for the life-halting talisman, according to your time, each talisman can only be used for 1 minute. That's the maximum time limit I can give you. Shengguan Yungu. I can only say a few words of blessing. For the time being, I can't help martial uncle. After I cultivate for a few hundred or 1,000 years, it should be of some use. Margaret. By the way, I have other charms here that can help the campus bell kill those bad guys quietly. I think you'll need them. Especially the one called Ouyang Shixian. It was best to use it on him. The sooner Ouyang Shixian was killed, the sooner the school bell would go to the next world. Maybe she would go to her magic world. Margaret thought that she was very smart. In the future, she would actively help the school bell. When the other party was done with her work, she would go back into seclusion. When he opened his eyes, perhaps the school bell would leave that world and go to the next one. Tang Gua thanked the people in the group. In the end, she asked Emmanuel for the gene modification agent, gene repair agent, and anything else that might be useful. Chapter 33:12. Emmanuel was right. The elixir did have many drawbacks in dealing with the female lead's body. Campus bell. Emmanuel, I need a lot of gene repair agents. Remember a lot. Sorry to trouble you. Emmanuel, no trouble. I'll go back and help you prepare. Look at the group. When I'm ready, I'll call you and send it to you. After the discussion, Tang Gua left the group. The system asked weakly. Host, why do you need so much gene repair agent? Aren't there a lot of clones in the secret laboratory that have genetic defects due to various reasons, which ultimately lead to defects in all aspects? A perfect clone like me is relatively rare in the secret laboratory. Of course, I need these gene repair agents to help them repair their genes. Now that I'm a clone, I have to help my own kind. Such a matter-of-fact answer made the system speechless. She might as well say that she wanted to cause trouble. That would be more direct. Wasn't it tiring to beat around the bush like this? They knew each other well. Was there a need to do that? A few days later, Tang Guo received the gene modification agent in the form of a red envelope from Emmanuel. In the past few days, Tang Zhou had also been hinting to Tang Guo that she hadn't figured out what to do. Tang Guo didn't answer directly. Instead, she looked at him with a confused face, which made Tang Zhou particularly mad. Good network. Secretly, Tang Guo had already made a preliminary plan. The first step of the plan was to go to the secret laboratory and control the people there. So she asked Qi Xiao to make a lot of puppets for her to use when she was out of Ouyang Shixian's sight. After getting the puppets, Tang Guo left one of them and went to the city closest to the secret laboratory. The secret laboratory was on an island. Although she could ask the system to help her break the layers of passwords to get in, it was easy to be exposed. She could easily escape, but Ouyang Shixian and the people in the laboratory would definitely be very vigilant. It would not be good for what she was going to do next. So, after she arrived at the city, she asked the system to send a message to a person in the secret laboratory to come out and see her. If he didn't come, he would never be able to see his family. Although she didn't do anything to the other party's family, and only investigated some information, she found out that this person had a weakness, and that was his only son. Initially, he didn't want to participate in this experiment, but he did so for his son. That was because his son urgently needed a new heart. Perhaps because of the genetic defect, the clones of his son that have been cultivated so far all seem to have a heart defect. There was no mention of this person in the plot. Tang Guo checked the later experiments in her memory, but she could not find him. It was possible that he had backed out later on, or that he had been silenced. However, it was best to control those with flaws. Where's Xiaoji? When Tang Guo took off her mask and revealed her face, Pei Tianyi was shocked. He was too familiar with this face. It could be said that he was also involved in the creation of this clone. After taking a deep breath, he continued to ask, "Do you already know the truth? What else do you want to know? I can tell you. You can come at me for everything. You can even take my life. But please don't hurt Xiaoji. Let him live his last few years in peace." He knew that such an experiment was definitely immoral. At first, he just wanted to take a gamble, but he still lost. Top point. Chapter 33:13. Xiaoji was born with a genetic defect. When he was born, he was found to have a heart problem. After he joined the secret laboratory, the clones bred with Xiaoji all had defective hearts. Xiaoji was 10 years old this year. If he couldn't complete the heart surgery by the age of 15, he wouldn't be able to live. This kind of congenital heart disease was more dangerous as he grew older. According to Xiaoji's situation, he might not be able to live past the age of 15. Now he had stopped all his studies and activities. He could only stay at home quietly every day. Over the years, in addition to using Xiaoji's genes to breed clones, he hadn't given up on finding a matching heart for Xiaoji. However, this was no different from winning the lottery. How could there be a suitable heart for Xiaoji? This organ was really too special. Even if he waited until there was a matching heart, it might not be able to be used in the end due to various accidents. It was very difficult to find a matching heart for a child. He had tried countless times, but had never succeeded. If he could withdraw from this experiment, he might have already left. However, once he joined this kind of experiment, he had no other choice. Now he was in a dilemma. Although all of the above was very sad and hopeless, Pei Tianyi didn't regret joining this experiment. It was just that he was unlucky and didn't succeed in finding a way to save his son. When he saw Tang Guo's face, he knew that retribution was coming. On the day he joined the laboratory, he was prepared for this. Either retribution was coming, or the owner of the laboratory killed him. However, he hoped that he would die a little later. At least he would die after Xiaoji. What do you want? Tell me. As long as you don't hurt Xiaoji. If you want me to help you escape, I can. If you want my life, I can. But please give me a few more years. When Xiaoji is gone, you can do whatever you want with me. Xiaoji was his lifeblood. Without his son, he had basically lost his greatest courage to live. If he hadn't been busy with work and spent more time with his wife, perhaps he would have known about Xiaoji's condition earlier. He wouldn't have developed so well, and the congenital disease wouldn't have appeared. Later, when his wife gave birth to Xiaoji, she wouldn't have given up her last hope, because he couldn't go over to accompany her. Therefore, he had really made too many mistakes. As long as you listen to me, I won't hurt Xiaoji. Tang Guo said slowly. You just need to cooperate with me and listen to me. Your son will live well. In the future, he might even be treated and continue to live. Okay, I'll listen to you. Pei Tianyi automatically ignored Tang Guo's words about saving Xiaoji. In his opinion, although this clone was the smartest and most special clone that came out of the laboratory, he did not believe that a clone could think of a way to save his son. Take me to the lab. You want to destroy the lab? Pei Tianyi said subconsciously, then shook his head. I won't stop you from destroying the laboratory, but the laboratory has layers of protection. If you're not a member of the laboratory, you can't enter. Even if I say that you are my assistant, you still have to go through the formalities. Not just anyone can be my assistant. Vertex. Chapter 33:14. Your bone structure, facial features, fingerprints, and even your pupils are evidence that will expose your identity. You might trigger the alarm before you reach the third door. As long as you're willing to take me in, I can go in. First, help me get an assistant certificate. No matter how powerful the electronic device was, it was just an inanimate object. It was easy for her to hide. Moreover, she had taken the gene modification agent. Not only had her genes been modified, but her bones had also changed. As for her pupils and fingerprints, it was even easier to solve. Okay, I can help you with that. But if I'm caught, if I say I can go in, I can go in. You just have to take me in. Don't forget about your son Xiaoji. System, your son Xiaoji is currently watching TV at home. Host, this woman really knows how to lie. She hadn't even seen Xiaoji before, but she was able to make Pei Tianyi nervous. It was as if she had really kidnapped Xiaoji somewhere. If you can't get in touch with him, that's because the system has taken over your phone. If you want to call someone, you have to get the system's permission first. Tang Guo handed a folder to Pei Tianyi. This is my current information. It'll save you a lot of trouble when you go through the procedures. Pei Tianyi took it and opened it. He was surprised. This clone seemed to be beyond his expectations. Then he thought about how she had lived outside for so many years. It wasn't surprising that she had some skills. Still, he was surprised that she could get this identity. Tang Guo had used a pseudonym for this information, Tang Tian. After all, if she kept using the name Tang Guo, even if she looked different, it would still arouse suspicion. Okay, I'll go back and do it right away. Your information. It's all real. Tang Guo smiled. Check it out. Pei Tianyi didn't want to believe it, but she looked very confident. He took the information and left in a hurry. When he was outside, he called home again. Still, he couldn't get through. He even called his friends, but they still couldn't get through. He felt helpless. Just as he was about to give up and put away his phone, a call came in. He hurriedly picked it up and heard Tang Guo's voice. Don't try to secretly contact others. I can see your every move. If you want your son to be well, cooperate with me first. Once I achieve my goal, I'll let you go to see your son. System. He still felt that the host was better at playing the bad woman. Look, she didn't do anything, but she could scare people pale. Yes, I got it. I won't make any other calls. Pei Tianyi wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. After hanging up the phone, he looked around and left hurriedly. A week later, Tang Guo and Pei Tianyi was on his way to a laboratory. When he entered the first door of the laboratory, he was extremely nervous. Once something happens to Tang Guo, Although he has a way to escape, he can only say that he was deceived by the other party. He was considered the backbone of the laboratory, so there shouldn't be any major problems. However, what if something happened to his son because of this? That was what worried him the most. Therefore, he hoped that everything would go smoothly. Peak. Chapter 33:15. The first door, the second door, the third door, all the way to the ninth door. They passed through all the defenses. Pei Tianyi's back was drenched in sweat. He brought Tanggua to change into her special clothes. Tanggua only asked him to arrange for her assistant according to the procedure, and didn't ask him to do anything else. He thought that Tanggua intended to gather information here, before moving on to the next step. After all, it wasn't easy to destroy the laboratory. They had just passed through layers of security doors. It was impossible to bring in anything dangerous. Every door would scan the entire body. Any dangerous items would be intercepted. Even if she wanted to do something, she needed the tools. When I'm free, I want to hear my son's voice. Pei Tianyi made this request to Tanggua in his personal office. He was indeed worried if he didn't see his son in a week. Okay, I'll let you video call him. Tanggua took out her phone. She could still bring it in, but there was no signal in the room. In the entire laboratory, there was only a special room for communication. There was a signal. The signals in other places had been blocked. But Tanggua had the system, which was a cheat. It was easy for her to get a signal. It's connected. You can talk to him. Tanggua handed the phone to Pei Tianyi. Pei Tianyi took it in disbelief. He immediately saw the child on the screen. He was so happy that he wanted to cry. Dad, why aren't you back yet? Didn't you say that you would come back to accompany me when the experiment reached a stage? Dad, when can I go to school? I think my body is in good condition now. There shouldn't be any major problems. After Pei Tianyi ended the 20-minute call with his son, he turned around and saw Tanggua sitting in front of his computer. He didn't know how she opened his locked computer. Your appearance may be the disaster of this laboratory. Pei Tianyi didn't stop Tanggua's actions. She could make video calls in places where the signal was blocked. His encrypted computer was easily cracked, and the secret documents could be seen by her just by moving her fingers. No, it should be a disaster for mankind. You think too much. Tanggua looked up and smiled. I don't want to destroy this world. I don't even want to kill all of you. I just want to have a place in this world. After all, you were the ones who made me appear. You can only blame yourselves for the consequences now. You're right. Pei Tianyi sat at the side and suddenly said, if it was 20 years ago, I might have gone crazy when I saw you. I might have even risked my life to capture you and study you. And now, I'm not in the mood for that anymore. Because of all kinds of experiments, the most important person in my life is slowly disappearing. The so-called pursuit experiments and dreams are just bubbles. Maybe I'm not a qualified experimenter. Tanggua quickly flipped through the information about her. I saw the information about me here. In order to successfully cultivate me, you spent a lot of money and almost used up everything in the laboratory? That's right. Because Miss Tang's umbilical cord blood was wasted in the beginning, there was only a little left. In order to succeed in your clone, we didn't leave any surplus. Top. Chapter 33:16. I used everything I could, and it was very successful in the end. Pei Tianyi glanced at Tanggua. But I didn't expect it to be so successful. Fortunately, there is only one clone. Otherwise, the human world would have been occupied by you. Tanggua was amused. She wouldn't tell Pei Tianyi that if she succeeded, it would be a disaster for them. Soon, all the clones here would become very outstanding, 100 times better than humans. Whether it was ability, intelligence, strength, or even lifespan, they would be stronger than humans. Humans despair. Pei Tianyi shivered inexplicably. It wasn't cold here, but he felt that the surroundings were cold, as if he was surrounded by glaciers. After reading the information, Tanggua understood why the original owner of the body had awakened such a strong power. These things for the original owner of the body should be one of the reasons. There was another reason. It should be the so-called mental torture to a certain extent that stimulated the power. She quickly browsed through the rest of the information and asked the system to copy a copy. When he was free, he could choose the useful information to analyze. How many clones do you have here? What kind are you referring to? Pei Tianyi thought for a while and asked. Tang Gua turned back. Is there a classification? Yes, after all, not all clones are as outstanding as you. They are even better than humans. Most of them are defective, barely maintained with nutrient solution. Some of them are waste products. They are all failed clones. They have a lot of defects and almost no research value. According to the classification, there are 4 categories: A, B, C, and D. Interesting reading. Type A is the successful product in our eyes. Type B has some small defects. Type C is a defective product. That is, it has more than one defect, but it can still have research value. As for Type D, it is a waste product, but it is more troublesome to deal with, so it is temporarily stored in the freezer. After a certain time, they will be pulled out to deal with. Tang Gua suddenly asked, Then I am Type A? No, you are Type S. The name of your product is Tang Gua S1 clone. Pei Tianyi said honestly. After all, you are the only Type S clone that our laboratory has cultivated with all the manpower, material, and financial resources. Does Type D have no signs of life? Tang Gua asked. Pei Tianyi nodded. Apart from the beginning, there was nothing else after it was thrown into the freezer. It had been like this all along. It had no research value to begin with, so naturally, they wouldn't waste nutrient fluids on it. If it was thrown into an ordinary freezer, it would naturally not have any signs of life. Currently there are 3 categories, A, B, C, and C. Give me the number. There should be no more than 20 Type A's, close to 1,000 Type B's, and tens of thousands of Type C's. After the appearance of Tang Gua's S-class clone, Ouyang Shixian paid more attention to this secret laboratory. Their laboratory didn't lack any funding. Ouyang Shixian managed such a large company. It was very simple for him to provide them with sufficient funds, equipment, instruments, and a series of other things. Of course, in name, this laboratory was not researching human cloning, but cloned organs. Yes, to the public, they would only research cloned organs. This was something that all humans in the world could accept. Are all the clones in the laboratory now? Vertex. Chapter 33:17. Yes, there are 18 floors under this island. Each floor can accommodate tens of thousands of people. Can I take a look? Pei Tianyi nodded. Yes, we can take out all types of clones for research, except for an experiment that requires a team to discuss. What about the clones? Pei Tianyi paused for a moment and said softly, The clones are no longer in the laboratory. Since you were born, many people in the laboratory. Pei Tianyi sighed. Including me. We have all cultivated clones for our own purposes. However, when I first joined the laboratory, I wanted to clone a heart for Xiaoji. Later, I realized that cloning an organ alone is not so easy. We have cloned countless animals before. After your successful birth, the main members of the laboratory cultivated the clones they wanted. Most of them cultivated their own clones. After all, they are not young anymore. Who doesn't want to live? Who doesn't want to have a healthy organ? You cultivated Xiaoji's clones? Yes, but Xiaoji's genes are naturally defective. We have cultivated them 3 times. The 3 clones all have heart defects. Their lifespans are not as long as Xiaoji's. In less than 2 years, their vital signs have disappeared. Now I don't have extravagant hopes. After all, Xiaoji's genes are defective. No matter how many clones we make, it won't help. Have they taken the clones away? Most of them have been taken away. I don't know where they have been taken to. Some of them are still in the laboratory. Anyway, this is a part that everyone has reached a consensus. We can't touch it. Okay, take me to see the clones. Let's take a look at the clones. Tang Gua felt that the gene repair agent in her system space was restless. She really wanted to run out and play. System, you are the one who wants to cause trouble. Tang Gua went to take a look at the clones first. There were not many clones. There were only a few genetic defects. At the moment, they were not idle. Every clone had their own things to do. They looked like normal people who were contributing to the laboratory. However, every one of them was wearing the same clothes, and had a number on their bodies. The people in the laboratory had instilled in them that they were people who had made mistakes and were being punished here. Because they were born blank, they were not instilled with the main body's memories, and they had not come into contact with the outside world. Therefore, they were as white as a piece of paper. They repeated the same thing every day without any resistance. Then Tangwa went to check on the clones. The situation of the clones here was much more complicated. Their flaws were more obvious. They might be crippled, or their arms might not be fully developed, or they might have other physical defects, or they might be mentally challenged. Some of them could do something, while others could only sit on the ground and draw circles. When it was time for them to be studied, the people in the laboratory would come in and take them away. When Tangwa and Pei Tianyi showed up, they all panicked, because they thought that they would never be able to come back if they were taken out. This should be an innate instinct in fear. Whether it was a human or a clone, they were all afraid of death. As for the genre, Tangwa didn't look at it. Perhaps the scene in the freezer was too horrible to look at. When they returned, they had just stepped out of the elevator when someone walked over. Everyone was wearing protective clothing and a mask. They could only be identified by the name tag on their bodies. After all, there were layers of security here. They could identify the name tag. Dr. Pei, haven't you been paying attention to those experimental subjects for a long time? Why are you suddenly interested in going down to take a look today? Do you have any new ideas? Are you planning to use the clones below to find inspiration? Yes, Pei Tianyi had not done cloning research alone for a long time. Ever since the life signs of his son's clones disappeared. At most, he would participate in some group experiments and write reports. Dr. Pei, I heard that you brought a new assistant today. Is it this, Miss Tang Tian beside you? Chapter 33:18. The person who spoke was also wearing a full protective suit. Under normal circumstances in this laboratory, he was dressed like this, because no one knew if the substance they were researching would be harmful to the human body. The other party's voice was a little hoarse and old. It sounded like a man who was close to 60 years old. Tangwa glanced at the other party's name tag. On it were the two words Gaofeng. Her eyes suddenly narrowed. Gaofeng, like his name, had the highest status here. He was the most trusted person of Ouyang Shixian. He had the absolute right to speak in the laboratory. It could be said that he was in charge of everything here. At the beginning, the person who proposed the human cloning experiment and helped Ouyang Shixian solve the problem was this Gaofeng. Not only did Gaofeng have a very high status in the laboratory, but he was also a very famous person in the outside world. He had published many articles and had a certain amount of influence internationally. Of course, if the human cloning was not prohibited, he would want to publish all his achievements so that the whole world could see his excellent results. The birth of the original owner and the dissection of the original owner in the laboratory were all done by Gaofeng. Gaofeng was a madman for the sake of experiments. As long as it was something that could be researched, something that could add brilliance to his life, he would not reject it. When he found out that the original owner was a reborn body, the first thing he thought of was to obtain this ability. Of course, he also understood that this experiment needed support. After weighing the pros and cons, he told Ouyang Shixian about it. At that time, Ouyang Shixian was also tempted. Even if he could not obtain a new life, the ability to regenerate would bring great benefits to both of them. Gaofeng was almost 60 years old. Perhaps because of the long-term research in the experiment, sometimes he would study the same thing for 10 days to half a month. In the long run, his body's condition was getting worse and worse. Now he wanted to make his body as healthy as when he was young. Previously, Tangwa learned from Pei Tianyi that Gaofeng had also cloned a young clone for himself. It was estimated that he was ready to take the other party's organs and replace them at any time in the future. Little Tian, this is Gaofeng, Dr. Gao. He is the main person in charge of this experimental base. Pei Tianyi found that Gaofeng had been inquiring about Tangwa and was very nervous. Gaofeng was not a simple person. For the sake of conducting experiments, this person could be said to have disregarded his own family. Once they found out that Tangwa was not a member of the laboratory, they would definitely take action to kill her. Hello, Professor Gao. Tang Gua greeted him with a smile. However, after the system whispered something to her, her smile became more profound. Madam Host, there's something wrong with this Gao Feng. Now, whenever the system met someone for the first time, it would scan them from head to toe. Therefore, at the peak of the scanning, they discovered something very wrong. Dear host, this peak is different from the one in the data. His age and voice don't match. I have already carefully scanned him. He looks young, his skin is firm, and his organs are intact. He doesn't look like someone who has lived for nearly 60 years. I suspect that someone is impersonating Gao Feng. Chapter 33:19. Dear host, you have to be careful. I've also sensed a powerful explosive force in his body. His vitality is many times stronger than that of a human's. I'm guessing that he's a human with special powers. The system sounded very serious. Dear host, is someone suspecting this place and investigating it? He had an Asian face, but Gao Peng didn't know which organization he was from. Is he very young? That's right. He looked very young, and was most likely from a special organization. It seemed that someone was suspicious of this laboratory. It wasn't strange. After all, this was such a big place. Someone was bound to discover something by accident. Tang Gua realized that Gao Feng was still sizing her up. She could sense that Gao Feng was particularly interested in her. She had sensed a familiar power the moment she saw him. Before coming here, she had already activated her body's potential. The original owner of this body should have awakened her superpowers later, but she already had them now. She sensed that Gao Feng's power was the same as hers. From this point of view, Gao Feng might not be a member of any organization, but a clone. If that was the case, it would be very interesting. Tongzi, analyze the facial features of Gao Feng and this person. See if there are any similarities between them, or if they are exactly the same. Dear host, they look similar, but they aren't the same. The system quickly scanned Gao Feng's information, and the person in front of it. If the real Gao Feng is here, I should be able to analyze their bones at the same time. The system understood what Tang Gua meant. It suspected that this person was Gao Feng's clone. No, it was already convinced that this person was Gao Feng's clone. For someone like Gao Feng, it was very likely that he would deliberately change his clone's appearance to be different from his own. After all, this was a clone experiment. If something went wrong, and he had the same facial features, he would be replaced by a clone. That would be very troublesome. Hello, little Tian. Gao Feng finally retracted his gaze and nodded at Tang Gua. Apart from not being able to go out casually, the laboratory is very free. I hope little Tian can have a good time here. Oh yes, Professor Pei, do you have any new ideas? Gao Feng picked up the previous topic and said meaningfully. It's been so many years. Professor Pei, you should pull yourself together. There might still be some hope, right? Pei Tianyi didn't mind Gao Feng's sarcasm. His son's genes were defective. Unless he found a suitable heart before the age of 15, he could forget about continuing to live. Cloning experiments were of no use to his son. Sometimes, when he looked at the clones lying on the operating table, he wondered if it was because he had committed too many sins that he could not find a suitable match after so many years. Since she couldn't find her, she might as well spend her last moments with her son. He did not choose to leave the laboratory directly, but it was not that easy to leave this place. He decided to wait until Xiaoji could not hold on any longer before he reconsidered. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.